through all this doom and gloom, I'm glad to say I've got some great news, everyone. I got some fantastic news. We have a win. I've got a video here. I'll just read it out quickly, then I'll play you the video. Pushback against mandatory medication in Australia. Important update. Dear class action members, we are excited to announce that the Victorian Government has quietly updated its care facilities direction, and in this direction they have, here it is, removed the mandating of the influenza vaccine on all visitors and employees of aged care residential facilities. I'll read that again. They have removed the mandating of the influenza vaccine on all visitors and employees of aged care residential facilities. There's a video. I'll just read the rest. This is the time for us to stick together and continue with the class action. The strength we have demonstrated in rising together and saying no is compelling. Our next steps will be to write to all chief health officers, these scum that we've never heard of before, who are controlling, making decisions. They're not making decisions. They're just going by a script from those above them. You know who they are. But they're using these chief health officers to advise premiers and prime ministers, how to control this bullshit, how to lock us down and whatever. Write to them in all states and territories to also press for the removal of these directives in line with what Victoria has done in the midst of an alleged pandemic outbreak. We will use their withdrawal as further proof that the directives are both unlawful and unreasonable. We will then contact you individually to assess your situation and to see if we can work with your employer to return you to work and re-establish proper contact with your loved ones. We know some of you have been coerced and others have lost your loved ones in this sad process. We also know some of you have been terminated, even vaccine injured after being compelled. We will re-examine the question of compensation in these cases. But in the meantime, we will work hard to use this as an opportunity to push the rest of the states and territories to withdraw their directives. As we have said from the start, strength in numbers. We will send you here. Anyway, warm regards, Serene Tefaha. Tefaha, I hope I pronounced it right, Tefaha, and the Advocate Me team. If you see Serene Tefaha anywhere, please support her. This is huge. Huge. So now I'm just going to play the 13-minute 45 video. And yes, folks, this is great news. Let's push back. We need to push back before it's too late.
Everybody, we decided to do this short video tonight upon receiving some news which affects this class action. The news is positive, I'm happy to say. It comes off the back of recent communications that we've had with the Victorian Government, but in concern to the hard lockdowns of those 9 towers in Melbourne. During this, we kind of became entangled in the situation, and Serene was asked to be a legal representative to the residents of these towers. And during this time, we were able to test some of our arguments. And since then, we've been witness to some sudden turnaround in these directives around the mandating of the influenza vaccine for workers and visitors to residential aged care facilities. The Department of Health has communicated with all the residential aged care facilities as far as we know, and this communication says, in relation to the influenza vaccinations in residential aged care facilities, quote, with the issue of Care Facilities Direction Number 8 from 11:59 p.m. on the 22nd of July 2020, Victoria's Chief Health Officer removed the restriction on persons entering or remaining on the premises of a care facility where the person could not demonstrate that they have an up-to-date vaccination against influenza, if such a vaccination is available to the person. Accordingly, employees who had not been vaccinated against influenza and who were required to work in other areas or take leave may now return to duty in care facilities. However, residential aged care facilities are encouraged to continue to recommend that staff and visitors have a flu vax, given the vulnerability of residents in the event of infection. While a requirement to have an up-to-date vaccination is no longer a requirement of the Victorian direction, staff and volunteers of aged care facilities are still required to be offered the vaccination program in accordance with Commonwealth requirements. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Serene, to start to unpack this for everybody.
Yeah, I think this is really good news. I think this is evidence of the fact that us uniting together in numbers that we have united in the way we have come together, it's created a wonderful momentum, a momentum of change, a momentum of influence, and a momentum of saying no, we will not accept this. We are aware of our rights, and we are aware of how our legislation works, and this primarily is the legislation being the Biosecurity Act, and the state legislation and how it should interact with each other to ensure that decisions that impact ourselves, our bodies, are decisions that should not be overcome so easily without the appropriate requirements and without the appropriate risks being assessed. This is excellent news. What it also shows is the language that the Department of Health has used. They used our language where we said the difference is between a recommendation versus a requirement. Okay? You can't require a perfectly healthy person to have a vaccination. It is just not an appropriate course of conduct. And we are so pleased to hear that now articulated by the Department of Health in Victoria, and articulated very unambiguously and very clearly. So I'm really happy about that. However, we've got a lot of work left to do, and that is, it's just happened here in Victoria, as far as our understanding is. We know that the other states and territories need to catch up, and so we will be putting a letter together prior to our action and advancing this in the court. We will be putting a letter together to urge all the states and the territories to match the actions of the Victorian government and the Department of Health of Victoria. It's also quite odd that this started in Victoria, given what we are now facing in Victoria is quite a lot of issues, okay, with regards to how our governments are enforcing some of these directives. So it shows that in fact the Victorian government has listened and has listened to our arguments, okay, and has listened to the probative nature of what we're saying. So I'm very encouraged by that, and I feel that that's going to create that level of influence for other states and territories to quickly become up to date with that, and we will be seeking to do the same in the other states and territories.
Yeah, I think this is very much something we need to be thinking carefully about. Why Victoria has been the first to do this, when Victoria has been doing nothing but coming down with such hardline tactics of late. And I think something that just I'm very interested to know about is that there are a lot of links going on in the medical world when it comes to the potential for the flu vaccine to does it make issues with COVID worse? There are a lot of people asking questions about this. And I want to know, all of a sudden, is Vic starting to think that, their aged care facility situation at the moment is, from what I hear or reports are, is quite disastrous. Are they thinking that maybe they made a wrong move here? It's definitely something to watch this space, but it's time for the rest of the states and territories to follow suit and remove this, because this is just, we've said all along, and it's true, this is not the right thing to be doing.
It isn't.
I think you make a good point, Melissa, as well, because we've all cited that Spanish study, which is making correlation between the influenza campaign over in Spain and testing positive for the COVID-19 virus, and in particular polysorbate 80 in the flu vaccine. And in this theory is that the increase in COVID-19 positive test results may actually be the result of that influenza campaign over there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's so much here that needs to be carefully looked at. I know I've already got more FOIs back in straight away this afternoon. We've got more going back in. I want to know what's going on, and I know you all do as well.
We definitely do, and I think apart from us now pushing this across all the other states and territories, because I think it's inconsistent and completely unfair for all the others in the other states and territories who want to see their families uninhibited by these restrictions and also return to their positions. And some have even been terminated, as we know, and some have been forced. So it cannot be reversed, the impact, and so I think it's only fair that the other states and territories come on board as well and be consistent all round, so that there's no perceived unfairness in all the other states and territories. Now, in relation to our class action, and in relation to these questions that are now being raised with regards to Victoria taking a step back from this directive, we want to assure our clients that we feel it's extremely important to still pursue this issue, irrespective of the fact that they've taken a step back. In fact, that actually helps our case a whole lot more when they've actually taken the step to remove this in the midst of quite a turbulent time in Victoria. So it only shows, okay, how much they may have got it wrong, okay? And we feel it's extremely important to raise the issue in the first place with the court to say that the very decision itself to impose and to require an influenza vaccine to see your loved one or to keep your job is in itself unlawful. And we feel that that is extremely important point to push through for the purpose that any future vaccine mandates or ideas, especially when we know they're talking about mandatory vaccines for COVID-19, we feel it's important to set the precedents and the boundaries. Vaccines should not be imposed on healthy people. Vaccines also, if someone is not well, they should be given a number of other options first through treatments and other measures before any vaccine is required on them, especially when we know that a lot of these vaccines that they're trying to develop with COVID-19, there's been complete admissions that they're rushing them through and that there are severe adverse reactions to be confronted. We should still have that choice, and healthy people, at least to begin with, should not be forced into these decisions. So we just want to assure our clients that even if we're getting some wins before actually going to court, that it's still very important for us to persevere.
Absolutely, and I very much feel that if there's a time in this whole in the journey that we've had with this case, there's a time not to pull out and not to back off. That's now, because why did they pull it back? Is that because they don't want it to go to court? This whole thing, I mean, I have some very interesting, I guess, things that I want to know. Are they doing this because they want everyone to get vaccines and want everyone to be mandated? Is that something? I mean, I'm just asking questions. I'm a critical thinker. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a critical thinker. And I want to know, are they thinking that that if this goes to court, that might topple what the end game might be? So now, definitely.
Exactly. Absolutely. Did you wanted to say something, Sandy?
No, I think I'll just repeat what Melissa was saying. I think that it is just a real question mark over what the motivation is behind this. And I think that it's good that we're having this result at the moment, but it is also, like Serene said, this is not the time to pull out. We need to keep the pressure on, and we need to keep challenging and debating these decisions and arguing those in court to make sure that we can get some decisive results on what it is that we're trying to achieve, to make sure that this doesn't happen again. It cannot happen again.
Exactly, and I think this is an indicator to all the Australian public out there. The mandatory influenza vaccine directives that came through is just but one of the many directives that we're hoping to obviously address in the larger class action that we will issue shortly. And that is also an indicator, this result now, even though it's small and, you know, we're going to ride the wave on it, it should show that when more people stand up together, when people stand up together and say no, we think that there is some things that are sensible and things that are not sensible. There's some things that should be done in a much more appropriate way, whether it's the masking, whether it is the detention of people for extended periods of time, whether it's isolating, testing, detaining people who come from overseas, even though they're healthy, the business lockdown, all the business lockdown, okay? If we all rise together, it shows that we may be able to truly influence the course of how things actually precipitate. And I'm really heartened by this for that reason. Fantastic. I think, yeah, so I think that sort of provides a bit of a summary for everyone. Yeah, and watch the space.
Yep, more updates to come.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Sandy. Thanks, Verena.